I decided to sit down and knock out the tests today, all of the tests 1, 2, and 3 for all 3 boss maps. So I'm going to share what I did for test 3 for each of those boss maps, starting with the Demon Lord, knock out the pillars, and use the Eevee's beam. I went with the Eevee because the beam is big damage and you get the little boat pet. The Obsidian Gemstone with the Huntress seemed like the lesser option, especially because she has a face melter, which is pretty close range, so I decided the Eevee is probably the better bet. But what I go through here this cycle is my strategy. I think it takes 5 cycles of this. So you can knock the 4th pillar out here with her beam, and then you don't have to wait for it to start up to start hitting him. Leads to more damage per cycle on the Demon Lord with her beam. You can see that was a big chunk of damage there. So after the boss's shield comes back up, the routine is I go up to this furnace and I hang out up here, mostly to avoid the goblins, and then his fireballs are easy to dodge because he just kind of stands still or flies still and throws them at you. I drop down with a big secondary attack there with the staff to blow the goblins away from my path, and then come down, same deal, knock out 3 pillars. If you get really close to the pillar, you can sort of shotgun them with her staff. She's shooting multiple projectiles, so you one-shot them. If you're really close, knock out the 4th pillar with her beam so you don't waste time starting it up, because there's very little time that his shield is actually down. He actually tagged me with a melee attack there. You don't get one-shot by the melee attacks, but the fireballs, the green fireballs, those hit really hard. So if you do get hit with one of those and you have any damage on you, you'll probably die. Best to keep your HP up and heal when you can. One of the techniques that I use often in these tests is if you run and jump, you can heal in midair, and that allows you to move and heal at the same time. So I'm down to my last cycle here, dodge some fireballs. I jump off and let go of the right click because it takes a second to actually engage, and then one more time I go around in a loop, knock out the pillars, charge up the beam here, and down he goes. So that's the test for the Demon Lord, test 3. You have a good amount of time left over if you do it like this. You don't miss any of the pillars. Next up, we've got the Goblin Mech. I went with the Apprentice for this one. This test was my least favorite. It feels a little bit like you're at the mercy of some RNG here, but the general strategy is I kind of just sneak by him when his back opens up. I just try to shotgun it and get the dragon's pet shots to hit it too. As you can see, his melee attacks hit really hard. They're not difficult to dodge, but you want to be close to him because you want to be able to shoot his back. So you end up having to play this game where you kind of dance around with him and try to shoot him and also dodge his melee attack. So after 2 of the cycles of his back opening, here's when you should anticipate Dark Elves coming in. What I found easiest to do, and I saw Aramir doing this, is you can activate your hero boost and then right click or your secondary attack or your overdrive, and that does a lot of damage, and you can just spam it fully charged. You don't have to actually charge it. Normally you'd have to hold your secondary attack to charge it, but when you activate your hero boost, you don't have to do that at all. And it is good for killing the Dark Elves, and you can kill the Dark Elves and deal damage to the Goblin Mech's weak spot at the same time. So that's the strategy. Whenever I save my hero mana for when the Dark Elves come, activate my hero boost, spam the right click, and try to, if I can, get those right clicks to also hit the Goblin Mech as well as the Dark Elves. If you can do both, that's great. If not, prioritize, staying alive, because if you die twice, it's over. But see that right there where I have him standing still and he's exposing the weak spot and he's shooting missiles, I can actually stand there and shoot. That's the best time to get in lots of damage. You kind of just have to get lucky, I guess, and get a few of those occasions where that happens. That's where I feel like, this fight kind of broke immersion for me, between having to stay in this center aisle and being used to being able to go anywhere on the map, and then being at the mercy of the way he turns around, exposing the spot. This one was less fun for me. It took like 4 or 5 tries to actually get it to where he wasn't facing a side for most of the time when his back was open or something like that. Here I choose at the end to just fake tank some missiles and get the win there. But yeah, this one was my least favorite, but that was my strategy for it. For the summit, I went with the monk for this one. The squire's viable too. You can kind of cheese him by standing in a certain spot and you won't get hit by the fire breath, but I like to run around and be able to shoot ranged damage too. So I activate the harpoon here, and I'm sitting here because the fireballs, they go to wherever you were, I think, when he shot it. So if you just kind of wait around and give yourself some gaps with movement, the fireballs will go somewhere that you're not eventually when you move. But I'm activating my hero boost here. I'm shooting my single projectile monk weapon at the dragon, which is bizarre because it has 5 projectiles for test 2. But anyway, I tried to just jump over his fire breath if I can and avoid the flyers. You can only do a maximum of 25% of the dragon's max HP per cycle. I pulled the harpoon a little too soon there. The fireballs, when he's shooting them, the orange ones don't do too much damage. The green ones hit for big damage. But the idea here for me was to save my hero boost for movement, and if I had any to spare, use it to deal damage. But I wasn't concerned with dealing damage with the hero boost as much as I was having it to move across the map and not miss harpoons. If you miss a harpoon and he's flying around the back of the map, you're basically going to lose at that point because you're going to have to wait. And that's the thing with this one. For me, it was like getting through that 25% of his HP as quickly as possible, avoiding the wyverns the whole time, and then dealing with the wyverns as I went to set up the next shot for the harpoon. And as you can see, I'm meleeing them because you have a really big hitbox when you melee. It's almost like it's a little bit behind you too. It's almost like a 360 hitbox, but you can occasionally check the map to see where they're coming from to know when they're close. But I just started to wait until they were in my periphery, and then I would just jump to the other side of the dragon. They'd have to come catch up with me, and usually by that time, that was enough time for me to deal that 25% of his max health, and then he just stops taking damage. So at that point, the most productive thing to do is then to fight the wyverns. But then, yeah, it's the most straightforward of these, I think, because it's 4 every time. It's always going to be 4 cycles, and all you have to do is deal the damage. He's not going to fly away. I didn't experience him flying away before I dealt that damage, so it seems like it's the most consistent of the tests. But that was my strategy. I like these heroes, the EV for the Alchemical Labs one, the Apprentice for the Throne Room, and the Monk for the Summit. Seemed like the move, seemed like the way to go, but that's how I did it. You get a bunch of trophies after you finish these. You get all the wings too, so they're definitely worth doing. Any questions, comments, concerns, pro strats, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and thanks for watching.